Sweat beaded on my forehead beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room. But it wasn't nerves. It was the cheap AC unit wheezing like a dying engine above my head. I sat there, listening to the faint hum of vending machines and distant monitors, trying to breathe through the recycled air that smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. Across from me, my brother Marcus paced. Like he owned the place. His scrubs were rumpled, his jaw set in permanent tension, the kind he liked people to notice. He'd just finished a 12-hour shift in the ER, and yet, somehow, he'd found time to polish his ego. That was Marcus. Always polished. Always the prodigy. He stopped pacing and looked down at me. Jenna, this gala's for donors and bigwigs, he said. You in those nurse clogs? Mom's donors will think we're running a thrift shop. His words hung in the air, sharp as a scalpel. He didn't mean to hurt me, not consciously, anyway. To him, it was just truth. A casual cruelty, spoken with a smile. But I could feel the old ache stir in my chest. The same one I'd carried since med school. The one named Not Enough. I looked past him toward the ballroom doors. Gold light spilled through the cracks, flickering across the marble floor like promises not meant for me. Behind those doors were donors, board members, family friends, the Hale circle. My family's empire. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the empire they guarded so carefully was already mine. But I'd learned long ago that power means nothing if you show it too soon. When people heard Hale, they thought of prestige. Surgeons, philanthropists, pioneers. My father had built St. Elias General from the ground up, and my mother turned it into a brand. Marcus followed in their footsteps, Harvard Med, surgical residency, golden child. And me? I was the compassionate one. The sweet daughter. The nurse. At every holiday dinner, Mom would beam with pride at Marcus while passing me the mashed potatoes. Maybe next year you'll specialize, dear, she'd say. Always maybe. They never saw what I was building. Because while they hosted galas and photo ops, I was in the trenches, working double shifts, patching up patients who couldn't pay their bills, watching bureaucracy choke lives that could have been saved. That's when I started my first clinic. Just a handful of rooms, a borrowed defibrillator, and 3 nurses who believed in what we were doing. We treated everyone, no questions, no insurance. No titles. And people came. By the end of that first year, I opened 3 more clinics. Then 10. Then 20. Quietly, carefully, I turned those clinics into Hale Health Systems, a private network. Dedicated to care without compromise. No one in my family knew. Not my mother. Not Marcus. Because anonymity was the one thing money couldn't buy, and I needed it more than approval. It started with a phone call. Mom's voice was sweet as syrup, but I could hear the strain beneath it. Jenna, darling, the St. Elias Donor Gala is next week. I think it would be nice if you came. Marcus will be presenting his new ER expansion. That new ER expansion was one of my projects. A pilot program I'd approved through my company's anonymous investment branch. But she didn't know that. To her, I was still the daughter who settled. I kept my tone light. Of course, Mom. I'll be there. She sounded relieved, or maybe apprehensive. Oh, wonderful. Just, please, nothing casual. It's black tie, dear. I smiled to myself. Don't worry. I'll wear my best. My best. That would do nicely. The night of the gala arrived with the kind of winter chill that cuts straight through silk and self-importance. The hospital ballroom glittered from the outside like a snow globe full of privilege. Inside, you could already hear laughter, champagne flutes clinking, the low thrum of a string quartet. And there I was, standing just outside the doors in my scrubs and my worn-out nurse clogs. Marcus spotted me before I could step inside. He blinked. Like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Jenna, what are you doing? You can't go in there dressed like that." I glanced down at my shoes. "These? They're my lucky pair." "Lucky pair?" he scoffed. "Jenna, this gala's for real doctors, not floor nurses. Mom's gonna lose it if she sees you like this." That word again. Real. He didn't even hear himself anymore. "You're still at county, right?" he continued. "Entry-level pay, night shifts." "Jenna, be serious. This is black tie philanthropy." His arrogance would have been almost funny if it hadn't been so familiar. Before I could answer, Mom's voice sliced through the space behind him. "Marcus, please. Jenna's trying." Then, to me. "If you'd specialized like your brother, sweetheart, instead of bedside care." There it was. The phrase that had followed me for decades. Bedside care. As though empathy were a consolation prize. I didn't respond. I just reached into my pocket, feeling the small velvet box hidden there. Inside were the keys to the new Hale Oncology Wing, a $50 million facility I'd built and named in honor of our father. A gift I planned to unveil tonight. They thought I'd come here to crash a party. In reality, I was here to change the story. Marcus noticed the box in my hand. "What's that? Donating bandages? A stethoscope?" I met his smirk with a steady gaze. "Something like that." Right on cue, my pager buzzed. He rolled his eyes. "Seriously? You're on call? You couldn't even take the night off?" I glanced down at the alert, a board notification from my company. $500 million expansion proposal approved. I smiled faintly. "I'll manage." Mom adjusted her pearl necklace, lowering her voice. "Jenna, please. No scenes tonight. The Patels are here, they fund oncology." The Patels. Their company ran clinical trials exclusively through my hospitals. Their CEO had my number saved as J. Hale, primary contact. But I said nothing. I simply straightened, brushed a wrinkle from my scrub top, and said, "Actually, Mom, I'm staying." And that was when the ballroom doors opened. Dr. Ruiz stepped through, a tall, composed man in a tailored suit. My chief of staff. He spotted me immediately and smiled. "Dr. Hale, there you are. The keynote's cued, and the Patels are asking if we'll confirm the merger announcement tonight." The world seemed to stop. Mom blinked. Marcus frowned. "Merger?" he echoed. "Wait. Dr. Hale?" Dr. Ruiz looked mildly confused. "Yes. Dr. Jenna Hale, Chief Surgeon and CEO of Hale Health Systems." The silence that followed was surgical, clean, precise, and devastating. Marcus's mouth opened but no sound came out. Mom's face went pale, her hand frozen mid-gesture. "Jenna, what is this? Your shifts, your apartment." I met her eyes evenly. "Those were my cover. While you hosted fundraisers, I was building hospitals. While you praised Marcus's residencies, I was performing surgeries that changed medical history." A ripple moved through the crowd behind us, whispers, recognition. "Dr. Hale?" someone murmured. "The Dr. Hale?" The tide had turned. I stepped forward. The hum of murmurs trailing behind me like a shifting tide. Dr. Ruiz extended a hand toward the ballroom. "They're ready for you, Dr. Hale." Every eye in that hallway landed on me, the sister in scrubs, the nurse in clogs, the ghost they thought they'd outgrown. I nodded. "Thank you, doctor." And I walked past Marcus. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, eyes wide. His carefully built image cracking one expression at a time. Mom's pearls rattled softly against each other as she finally found her voice. "Jenna, you could have told us." "I tried," I said. "You just never listened." Then I pushed open the doors. The light hit me like a second sunrise, chandeliers reflecting off polished glass, the air thick with perfume and self-importance. The string quartet paused mid-note. Conversations died like a wave, collapsing into silence. I could feel the shift in the room as people recognized me. Some had seen my name on journals or medical boards, others had seen it on donation plaques they hadn't bothered to read. Now they were putting the face to the name. Dr. Ruiz guided me toward the stage. "You're first up, Dr. Hale," he said quietly. "Keynote and donation announcement." "Perfect," I replied. I turned to the crowd. Faces, hundreds of them, all turned upward, waiting for the next showpiece in their evening of philanthropy. They thought this was going to be another speech about Marcus's ER expansion. But this was my table now. "Good evening," I began. "My name is Dr. Jenna Hale, Chief Surgeon and owner of Hale Health Systems." A few gasps, a few polite claps. Mostly confusion. I continued, voice calm, deliberate. "I stand here tonight not as the daughter of St. Elias General's founders, but as one of the thousands of doctors and nurses who walked these halls unseen. I started in these rooms. I worked double shifts, lost patients, saved others, and learned that medicine doesn't need prestige, it needs purpose. And purpose, I added, is what built Hale Health Systems, a network of hospitals, clinics, and research centers designed to give care back to those who've been priced out of it." The words rolled out like a confession and a revelation all at once. "I'm proud to say St. Elias General will now join that network." The crowd erupted. Applause, sharp, stunned, and genuine. I glanced at Marcus across the room. He looked like he'd swallowed glass. The auctioneer cleared his throat, clearly thrilled. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next item, a special donation from Dr. Jenna Hale herself." The spotlight shifted toward me again. I held up the velvet box. "This," I said, "contains the first key to the new Hale Oncology Center, a wing dedicated to advanced cancer research, named after my father, Dr. Robert Hale." A hush swept the room. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. She whispered, "Robert's name." The auctioneer began the bidding, and the numbers climbed faster than I'd expected. 1 million. 2. 5. It was surreal, watching people fight over the chance to be part of something that I had built from scratch. Every number felt like validation carved from years of dismissal. Marcus couldn't even look up. Mom sat stiff in her chair, caught between pride and the bitter taste of realization. By the end, the Oncology Center key sold for $12 million. The crowd rose in applause. Flashbulbs. Journalists. Questions. But I just smiled and stepped back. By dessert, the entire board had moved to my table. The Patels discussed merger terms. Hospital directors handed me cards. Everyone suddenly remembered my name. Marcus lingered at the edge of the room, a ghost in a designer tie. When the gala finally thinned out, he approached. "Jenna," he started, voice low. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered?" I asked. "You never asked." He hesitated. I thought you were happy being a nurse." "I was," I said. "That's how I became a better surgeon." He blinked, confused. "I learned to listen. To care first, cut second. It's what Dad taught me, but I guess you were too busy impressing him to hear it." His face twisted, shame and regret warring beneath his practiced composure. "You made me look like an idiot tonight," he muttered. "I didn't make you anything, Marcus," I said. "You did that yourself." And I walked away. Outside the ballroom, I found Mom waiting. Near the elevators. Her pearls were askew, her lipstick fading. For the first time, she looked small. "Jenna," she said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years." I studied her face, the same one that had smiled over gala dinners and whispered backhanded comfort when I needed truth. "Would you have believed me?" She didn't answer. "I just wanted you to be happy," she said finally. "To be safe." "Safe isn't the same as small, Mom." "We thought you gave up," she whispered. "We thought you settled." I shook my head. "I just stopped performing for you." Her eyes watered. But she said nothing more. I pressed the elevator button and turned away. As the doors closed, I saw her reflection fading, pearls glinting like tiny ghosts. Later that night, I climbed up to the rooftop garden, the one I'd designed years ago for recovering patients. The air was cold but clean. City lights stretched out below, glowing like a constellation of every life I'd touched without them knowing. I sat on a bench surrounded by mint and lavender, and finally let myself breathe. For years, I'd imagined this moment, the grand reveal, the vindication, the perfect revenge. But now that it was here, it felt quieter than I expected. Softer. Because this wasn't about making them kneel. It was about finally standing up straight. I'd spent my whole life trying to be seen by my family, when the truth was, I'd already built a family of my own. Every nurse, every patient, every doctor who believed in me when they didn't. That was my legacy. And that, not the applause. Downstairs, was what peace felt like. The next morning, the news had already hit every medical outlet. Dr. Jenna Hale, the hidden force behind Hale Health Systems. There were interviews, requests, partnership offers. But I ignored them all. I had rounds to do. Old habits die hard. When I walked through St. Elias that morning, staff members greeted me differently. "Good morning, Dr. Hale." Real respect. No more underestimation. Marcus was there too, leading a team meeting, probably pretending nothing had changed. But when our eyes met, he looked down. That was enough. "You." No, I used to think success meant proving them wrong. That one day, I'd stand on a stage and watch them choke on every doubt they ever fed me. And in a way, I did. But the real revenge wasn't that moment of power. It was every moment I didn't need them anymore. Every time I walked into an operating room and knew I was exactly where I belonged, no validation required. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't shouting your triumph. It's letting your silence echo louder than their disbelief. Morning light filtered through the hospital windows, tracing gold along the floor tiles. The gala was already yesterday's news, but its aftershocks still moved quietly through the halls. Whispers in staff lounges. Curiosity in patient rooms. I walked through them all with the same measured calm I'd carried for years, only now, people saw it. Funny how visibility works. You can stand in the same place for years, doing the same thing, and only when you no longer need to be noticed does everyone start looking. Marcus caught up with me near the surgical ward. "You're early," I said. He offered a half smile, the kind that hides more than it says. Couldn't sleep. Neither could I, but for different reasons. He followed me into the observation room. Patients below. Machines humming steady. He took a breath. "You made your point," he said. "I wasn't trying to make one. You humiliated me in front of the board." "You humiliated yourself," I said. "All I did was show them who I am." He looked away. For a long time, we stood in silence. Two people raised in the same house, shaped by the same pressure, but cracked along different lines. Then he said something I didn't expect. Dad would have been proud. I studied his face. No sarcasm. No performance. Just truth. "Maybe," I said. But it took me a long time to stop needing him to be He nodded. You built something incredible, Jenna. I just wish you'd believed it. Before everyone else did? He gave a small, broken laugh. Yeah. That. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't sharp anymore. Just tired. Healing. Sometimes. Forgiveness doesn't need words. Just space. Later that week, Mom came to the hospital. No pearls this time. Just a cardigan and a bouquet of hydrangeas. You look well, she said. So do you. I replied. We walked together through the new oncology wing, still half-built, the smell of fresh paint and plaster thick in the air. She ran her hand along the nameplate template. The Robert Hale Oncology Center. He would have loved this, she said. I nodded. I know. For a while, she didn't say anything. Then, almost too quietly. I'm sorry. I turned. Mom. No. She said. Let me finish. I should have defended you more. I should have seen you. You were always the strong one, Jenna. But I was so busy trying to hold everything together that I forgot who I was. Holding it for. Her voice trembled. You didn't need to make us proud. You already were. The words hit somewhere deep, not as redemption, but as release. I smiled softly. Thank you, Mom. And for the first time in years, the silence between us felt safe. 3 weeks later, I sat at the head of the new St. Elias Hale board. Same room. Different gravity. The director spoke with careful deference now, not out of fear, but respect. I listened more than I spoke. Because power, I'd learned, doesn't always mean volume. When the meeting ended, one of the younger doctors pulled me aside. Dr. Hale, she said, I wanted to thank you. Seeing someone like you lead, it matters. Someone like me. The invisible nurse. The underestimated sister. The woman who rebuilt an empire. Quietly enough that no one noticed until it stood taller than the one that ignored her. I nodded. You'll do the same someday. Maybe, she said. But you made me believe it's possible. Months passed. The oncology center opened. And I returned to the lecture hall where I'd once sat at the back, scribbling notes while my professors praised people who looked more competent than I felt. Now, I stood at the podium. Students filled the seats, whispering, eager, impatient. I adjusted the mic. Good morning. I'm Dr. Jenna Hale. I used to think medicine was about proving yourself. But it isn't. It's about proving that compassion still belongs in science. I told them stories, not of revenge, but of resilience. Of quiet nurses who catch mistakes that save lives. Of young doctors who listen before they diagnose. And I told them about failure, how it doesn't end you, it refines you. When I finished, they stood and applauded. Not for the speech, but for the idea that someone had made it their own way. That night, I walked back through the garden one last time. The same rooftop where I'd sat after the gala. Only now, the lavender had bloomed. Funny how things grow when you stop watching the clock. I sat down on the same bench, pulled out my father's old pocket watch, and wound it once. The click was soft, final. Time, he used to say, isn't something you chase. It's something you build within. I looked out over the city lights, my city, my hospitals, my people, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I had become exactly who I needed to be. No permission. No validation. No applause required. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Success built from spite is temporary. Success built from purpose lasts forever. You can spend your whole life waiting for people to see your worth, or you can get up quietly, build something undeniable, and let them trip over it when it's done. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's just living so well that silence does all the talking. That's what I did. And it turns out, silence echoes longer than applause. This story was called The Surgeon They Ignored. A tale about patience, purpose, and the kind of revenge that doesn't burn, it heals. If you've ever been underestimated, remember. You don't owe them your explanation. Just your excellence. Thanks for listening. Until next time. Stay sharp. Stay steady. And never stop building in silence.